Hello, and welcome to another episode of Perspectives from the Inform Perspective. We're Penny and Jenny, and if this is your first time tuning in, we're so glad you're here. This podcast is a space where we explore what it means to build strong, thoughtful communities, ones grounded in our local lives, but also enriched by the diverse perspectives we gather from around the world. As our name suggests, we believe that meaningful change starts with listening, really listening to voices, lived experiences, and perspectives that might challenge or expand our own. In each episode, we take a closer look at individual stories that spark reflection and help us rethink how we understand community, purpose, and impact. We explore issues that matter rooted in the everyday realities of our communities, but with insights that transcend borders and cultures. The goal, to build empathy, broaden our understanding, and bring renewed value back to the places we care the most about. We encourage thoughtful dialogue from every angle because we believe that only by exploring different viewpoints can we make more informed choices, individually and collectively. We embrace the complexity of human perspective and the richness they bring. And today we're diving into a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts: body image. Earlier this year, we began this conversation on a previous podcast, but it quickly became clear that really we'd only scratched the surface. Body image is a topic that affects not just our own lives, but the lives of the young people that we work with through Tween Talk. And honestly, even as an adult in my 40s, I am absolutely aghast how little has changed. The same narratives we heard 20 or 30 years ago are still going strong. Pressure to be thin at the expense of health and happiness, and the added expectation to also be sporty and muscular, two ideals that are rarely achievable together. But on top of that, today's youth face new pressures that didn't exist when we were younger. The constant stream of online content, social media filters, image manipulation, and the endless comparison game. Brands pushing expensive creams, diets, and products, each one contributing to the weight we feel and how we see ourselves. And that's why today's conversation matters. Body image is how we see, think, and feel about our bodies. And it's not just about appearance, it's about the way we experience our bodies physically, how we move, and how we sense ourselves. And we start forming these ideas really early in life, shaped by our culture, family, peers, and society. And when our body image is negative, it can lead to feelings of shame, anxiety, or self-consciousness. It can affect everything we view, from our shape and size to our skin, hair, and even muscularity. And the consequences can be serious. Negative body image increases the risk of depression, low self-esteem, and eating disorders. Much of this dissatisfaction stems from comparing ourselves to unrealistic ideals, especially those, as mentioned, reinforced by social media and diet culture. Studies show that perceived overweight, not actual BMI, is strongly linked to depressive symptoms and suicidal thoughts. So how do you see yourself? How do you feel in your own body? If it's not always positive, then you're far from alone. Negative body image is one of the strongest predictors of eating disorder and maladaptive weight control practices. These negative feelings often lead to behaviors like skipping meals, over-exercising, or misusing supplements and diet drugs, all of which can have long-term effects on our mental and physical health. Body image is shaped by cultural ideals, the standards that tell us how our bodies should look in order to feel attractive, confident, and worthy. For women, the thin ideal, a slim body with a small waist and low body fat, has long been in. For men, it's the tall, muscular, lean physique. Bodies that fall outside these narrow ideals, especially those with excess fat, are often stigmatized. In recent years, we've seen new variations of these ideals emerge. For women, there's the fit ideal, which emphasizes a toned and athletic look, and the slim, thick ideal, characterized by a tiny waist, wide hips, and large buttocks. Still, these body types remain rare, genetically limited, and difficult to achieve, and yet they are portrayed as both normal and expected. This has led to a rise in unhealthy behaviors, from chronic dieting to disordered eating, bigger muscles, strict diets, protein overload, supplements, and now injectables marketed as quick fixes for weight loss. Medications like Ozempic are now being used off-label for rapid weight loss, and even youngsters are gaining access to them. According to the JAMA Network, teen and young adult use of GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, and Zepbound in the US skyrocketed by an astounding 594% between 2020 and 2023. Celebrities and influencers tout these drugs as a quick fix, fueling the extreme measures people are taking to meet body standards that were never meant to be achievable in the first place. But do we really understand the long-term health effects, especially for young people still growing? And what happens when we take shortcuts to health? And is it setting kids up for future problems? These pressures go deeper than skin. They shape how we see ourselves, how we behave, and how we define health and beauty in a world obsessed with appearance. Technology adds that other layer. Beauty filters on social media fuel body dysmorphia and social self-comparison. Celebrity culture compounds this. Today's undetectable era of cosmetic procedures and rising use of weight loss injections further distort reality. The data speaks for itself. A 2025 study in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics of 21,000 youth across 6 countries, that's Canada, Australia, Chile, Mexico, the US, and the UK, found that 35% felt larger than ideal and 20% thinner than ideal. In Australia, the Butterfly Foundation survey found nearly half of 12 to 18-year-olds are unhappy with their appearance, with 90% reporting at least some body image concern. And a 2024 Dove report of 33,000 people across 20 countries revealed that 2 in 5 women would give up a year of their life to achieve their beauty ideals. These statistics show that body image is a global issue, and in many ways, it feels like progress has stalled. While we understand the importance of healthy eating and exercise, we still see kids not eating to become thinner and rising rates of obesity and diabetes. So how do we stop measuring health by appearance alone? How can we help young people and adults build a healthier, more balanced relationship with their bodies in a world obsessed with perfection? And how can we challenge the narrow ideals and narratives that have been ingrained in us for decades? These are big questions, and there are no simple answers, and that's why we are so glad to be joined by our panel today to explore these issues, share their expertise, and help us think about what meaningful change could look like. As ever, I start with a few voices, and in this case, we're talking about the pressure of body image. Serena Williams on taking weight loss medication. It's so important to have an honest conversation about this topic. I'm the mum of 2 girls, and I wanted to be very honest about what I'm doing so we can have an open relationship. As for those who say, if you work hard enough in the gym, you won't need the drugs, they're misinformed. Sometimes you need help. Your story is your story, and it's okay to make the choice to do it if you want to. I did, and I'm really happy with it. Lizzo, the singer and body positivity advocate. I'm not working out to have your ideal body type. I'm working out to have my ideal body type. I don't ever want people to think that body positivity means you don't care about your health. Body positivity means that you're not judging yourself for your shape or size. It's about respecting yourself and not letting anyone else make you feel less than. Rihanna, I am not a skinny girl and I don't want to be. I love being able to embrace my curves and my shape. I think the most important thing is that you feel confident in your own skin. Confidence is the most important thing, and that's what makes people look at you and feel like you have it all. David Beckham, I've always had body issues, even when I was playing football professionally. I was concerned about how my body looked. I think that's just the way the world is, and we have to start teaching young people to love their bodies no matter what. Michael B. Jordan, the actor, I don't take my body for granted anymore. I'm grateful for it. I take care of it because I know it's the vehicle that allows me to do everything in my life. But the idea of being obsessed with your body is dangerous. It's about balance. And finally, Dr. Susie Orbach, psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, and writer. It's usual for body confidence to fluctuate over time, particularly when we go through stressful periods or when our bodies undergo physical changes, such as during puberty or pregnancy. However, this can become problematic when our self-esteem and sense of self-worth, which are closely tied to our appearance and body image, are shaped by external forces, such as what we see in advertisements or on social media. This is when dissatisfaction occurs, and we can internalize beauty ideals, and the struggle to enjoy our own beauty can escape us. So on that note, I'm moving over to you, Jenny, to introduce our wonderful guests today, please.
Thank you, Penny. So as mentioned, this is a topic we've been referencing ever since we started the Perspectives podcast and these conversations. And I just wanted to share last night a post I saw on social media. So not necessarily a quote, but, a meme. If tomorrow women woke up and decided they really liked their bodies, just think how many industries would go out of business. And for me, this is just the reality of the capitalist world we live in and we're navigating and the pressures it puts upon us. So today we have two impressive women speaking up about this. And first up, we've got Molly Forbes, who's the founder of the Body Happy Organisation, a non-profit helping children and young people celebrate, respect, and accept all bodies, especially their own. An award-winning author, campaigner, and broadcaster, she brings nearly 20 years' experience in journalism, media, and communication. Her books, Body Happy Kids and Everybody share practical ways to tackle body shame early. Everybody has highly commended in the Teach Primary Awards and shortlisted for the Week Junior Book Awards. Molly is a winner of the Fair Education Alliance Innovation Awards, with work focused on prevention, media literacy, and youth-led advocacy. She's featured on BBC News, Channel 4, Sky News, Women's Hour, Radio 1's Newsbeat, LBC, and more. Alongside leading her organisation's strategy, she supports schools, families, and businesses through training, talks, and consultancy. And Mel Ciavucco is an integrative counsellor, writer, and trainer, specialising in eating disorders and body image, and also domestic abuse and sexual violence. She has worked in mental health charities for over a decade, including domestic abuse services and eating disorder charities. Mel writes informative content on her blog about disordered eating and more. So let's get this conversation started, Penny.
Great. Well, I'd like to turn to you, Molly, first today. We've all been reading about, the accolades you're getting for your new book, Everybody. Congratulations. In this book, you are exploring the connection between body diversity and mental well-being. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about this? And I guess what changes you hope to see in the way society talks about bodies?
Sure. So Everybody, the subtitle of Everybody is Celebrate, Respect and Accept All Bodies, especially your own. And it's a book for middle grade readers. So the ages of the kids that you're working with, tweens, 9 to 13, 14-year-olds. And when I wrote this book, when I was even thinking about what book I wanted to write as my second book after Body Happy Kids, which is for adults, I was really keen on how we could move the conversation along for children and young people, and stop looking at body image as just a me issue, as how we think and feel about our own bodies, but actually start thinking about it as a we issue. So how we treat other people who live in bodies that don't look or function like our own. And so Everybody is very much kind of an outward looking book. It's about how we think and feel about our own bodies, but also, how we come to the judgments that we make about people based on how they look, and how those judgments can also affect how we feel about ourselves. And also, I really didn't want to write a preachy, lectury, serious book, because it is quite a serious subject. It can be a really serious subject, but also we're battling with TikTok and YouTube and all of these things that are really attention grabbing for young people. I wanted it to be a book that was engaging and fun and joyful and relatable. So I think that one of the things that I'm really pleased about with this book is the way that the illustrations kind of capture some of the ideas. And Molly Cronin, who illustrated the book, really she's incredibly talented artist, and she really kind of brought a lot of the ideas to life. So this idea of body diversity is sort of running throughout the book, and the book looks at why our bodies are different. So really, educating and informing children of, like, body diversity is actually a fact of life. And even if we all ate the same food and moved our bodies in the same way, we would all have different shaped bodies. And actually, that's something that we can celebrate. And when we celebrate that form of diversity, that can be really good for our own body image, but I think even more importantly, really good for the kind of way that we treat other people and how we make other people feel included and accepted, and don't even actually use appearance as something that we even necessarily think about. We're thinking about the person inside. So that kind of understanding around why body diversity, thinking about it is kind of a natural thing. I think that particularly in the sphere of education and mental health, we can celebrate diversity, and we talk a lot about celebrating diversity. And when we think about diversity, often that's thinking about things like neurodiversity, ethnicity, diversity in how we learn, and our family makeup. And actually, body diversity is sometimes forgotten. And actually, body diversity is just another form of, like, diversity. It's a form of how we're all different. And that's something that should be celebrated. So that's what I wanted to do with this book, was teach children, about body diversity and have that as a running theme throughout the book. And then help young people think critically about some of the messages that might make them think that body diversity is a bad thing, and that actually we should all look the same, and that there is a right way to have a body and there's a wrong way to have a body, and that if you don't meet what the society and the culture that you live in, that perfect idea of what a body might look like, and that kind of perfect idea will change over time, and it can change depending on where you live, and it can change depending on what culture you're growing up in. But ultimately, if there's an idea of a perfect body or a right way for a body to be, then that's automatically giving us something that we can compare ourselves to. And ultimately, we're going to come up short because A, that ideal will change all the time, and B, there's no way that everyone can look like that because body diversity exists. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with the book, was help children understand, why body diversity exists. And then also, think critically about some of these messages that are kind of, even if they're not explicitly telling us that actually, you should look a certain way, and it's not, like really obvious, I don't know, beauty advert or something. Often these messages are quite insidious and they can be under the radar, and it might not be from social media. I argue quite passionately that actually social media is not the only thing to blame for our bad body image. We know that children as young as 3 can display anti-fat bias, and I don't think that many of those children are necessarily using TikTok. So we need to think about where else these messages are coming for children and how early they can kind of appear in our lives. And so the book is about helping children think critically about some of these messages and notice them and be informed about them, so that they can start feeling, empowered in their own bodies, and, also empowered to speak up for others.
It's amazing, Molly, hearing you sort of summarize the book and the approach you've gone with the book, and it's about the information, and it's like, this shouldn't be like new and it almost sounds like you're like, oh wow, this isn't spoken about like this. And actually, I was thinking about the information and the education that my children have about their bodies. So what books do they have? So yes, I've explored books about diversity and different ethnicities and abilities, and but the bodies, I just pictured the body in a, inside my body, what happens, and it's all that one shape, the slim shape, and they don't learn, the word fat, for example. They don't learn that everybody's body has that. It's actually not a describing word. It's something we all have.
Every cell in your body.
You need it. And I think that information is so critical. So it's incredible to hear you talk. But it's also a little bit alarming that I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. That actually there's not much information like that out there. So that concept of body diversity is so important. And we can all say it to our children, everyone's different. I've had these conversations, look at so and so, tall, shorter, you've got to think of the words you use, but slimmer, bigger tummy, smaller tummy, bigger boobs, whatever. But actually, what else are they seeing? And exactly as young as 3, and that's what made me think of the kids' books. What's being represented and what's showing up and what's on TV and all the information. And for me, it's the outdoor marketing, even just like the billboards still these days of the bodies. But it's wonderful to hear this approach, Molly.
Thank you. I
What
think
I
also, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. It was just from my point of view, though, is that challenge, and like quite right, how you said that you've used a lot of images and pictures to get the attention, is how do you have that conversation? Because I think, I have a tween, so I know what's going on. I know that that is already starting to raise its head. And there is an element of not wanting to listen to mum or dad, like we've heard it all before, we know it, whatever. And I still think that there's so much pressure that comes from your peers, right? So that is really now where it's pivoting at the age of, 11, 12, 13, that you're listening to what your friends are saying and how they're showing up and what they're looking like. So you've kind of got these two prongs. You've got the decades of the narrative that our generation has been battling with, that we've gone on and on in our heads, that we're still beating ourselves up about, that we're not the ideal. And then on the other hand, you've also got the problem that how the youth, what they do want today. And often I do feel there is an element of just shutting down and saying, yeah, you don't know what it's like, this is how it is. And social media, even if you're not watching it, you're getting exposed to it, or at least some of the friends are exposed to it, so they're feeding it back. So I'm intrigued to ask you really, what other things, apart from using lovely imagery and nice pictures, what other things are you finding that are useful in having these conversations?
So in the book, there are like lots of little kind of mini toolkits. And one of them is, how to approach a conversation if your friend tells you that they're going on a diet, for example, or how to navigate your auntie who you see every Christmas who's constantly commenting on your appearance. And I think that you're right. I think that these pressures can come from everywhere. And we know that, peer pressure and the influence of peers is really massive when you get to be starting to go through puberty, which is also when our bodies are changing, which is also when you might be weighed at school if you're in year 6, and that can also bring about issues. And it's also when you might be, doing a healthy eating module at school and be hearing specific language that might be reinforcing ideas of like good and bad food, for example. So all of these things together can kind of create a perfect storm in some cases, which I'm sure Mel will expand on like further into the conversation. But I think that what we can remember is that we don't want to, as the adults in our children's lives, be perpetuating or reinforcing, even if it's inadvertently, some of these messages that they might be getting. So it's thinking as much and as often as possible, how can we disrupt some of these ideas? And sometimes it might just be thinking of the books and the art and the language that we use around bodies, neutralizing that word fat. And fat is not a bad word. Some people have thin bodies, some people have fat bodies, but actually all bodies are good bodies. And most importantly, it is never okay to comment on someone else's body, because you don't know how they feel about their body. You don't know how they define their body. Someone might have a bigger body and choose to refer to themselves as fat, and someone might have a bigger body and choose not to use that word. But ultimately, it's kind of stepping in and disrupting some of these ideas as often as possible, and really kind of reinforcing that idea that all bodies are good bodies. And I think that with tweens and teens and young people, more than ever, it's kind of more important to just create a space to listen and not to jump in. So often a really common one that we hear is like a child or a young person will say they don't feel good you know, I'm not pretty, or my body, I don't like my body. And that can really create like a visceral reaction, you know, in an adult, because we bring all of our own stuff to that conversation. But I think at that point it's quite important just to stop and not jump in with kind of like reassurances that can sometimes reinforce some of those ideas. So for example, a really common one is a kid will say, I'm fat, and then the response will be, you're not fat, you're beautiful. Well, what's that saying? That's reinforcing the idea that you can't be beautiful if you are fat. It's also reinforcing the idea that being beautiful is the most important thing. So I think that kind of offering a moment, just having a moment to just, okay, that's interesting. Like, can you tell me like why you're feeling that, you know, what has something happened today, where has it come from? And then, like, depending on your relationship with your child and the age of your child, I think it's also okay to be open that actually this is stuff that we all struggle with, because grown-ups don't know everything. Grown-ups often get things wrong, and actually that can be a moment of like solidarity with your child, and just like, it is hard having a body in the world that we grow up in, because there are so many pressures, and you know, lots of people feel like that. It doesn't mean that just because something is common, and we know that lots of children and young people and adults worry about this stuff, it doesn't mean we have to accept it as normal. There's a difference between recognizing that lots of people feel that way, and then also kind of thinking, oh, well, that's just normal, like just being resigned to that. A bit like that David Beckham quote that you shared at the beginning, where I think he says, you know, it's just like part of the course in the world that we live. Well, it doesn't have to be, actually. I challenge that. I don't think that we have to just accept that as a way that we have to feel. And there are things that we can do to challenge that. You know, including like some of the toolkits and things that I share in my book. But I think you're right. I think that the worst thing that the young people want to hear, particularly from their own parent, is you know, being lectured to, you know, and you know, they can find it really cringy.
Course
They
they
want to
can.
hear it.
Yeah, I think the trouble is that we, you know, with maturity, I think we're a bit mature. We're aware of like what it means for long-term health, right? So I think that's a very different thing when you're talking to a young person who's in the immediate now. And, you know, if I skip my lunch for the next year, it doesn't really matter. It's not such a big deal or whatever. But we know potentially what this conversation about the nutrition really means, and that it can mean later that you won't be able to, you know, have your period, or, you know, your skin will suffer, your hair, your bone density, all this other stuff. But again, I feel even that conversation, when I have that with an 11-year-old, you know, you know, if you think back to yourself at that age as well as a teenager, you just wanted to go out, have fun, whatever. So I think there is definitely that challenge there, and it's one that I struggle with. And I think again, that's also what we say, what spills out of our mouths. When I see a photo of myself and I go, oh my gosh, it's literally falling out. Oh, I don't look right in that photo. Don't like what I look like. I look a bit fat or whatever. It's because it's been like that for our whole life. It's drilled into us, and that I am so consciously aware I don't want to pass that on, you know, to the next generation. But I think that is a lot of where the damage has already been done, I feel, and turning that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like we all just need to give ourselves a bit of a break, to be honest, because I think that often what can happen with like the parent, when we run parent workshops as well as part of our work in schools, and also, you know, with communities. And one of the things, this is a really common thing, the parents who are most engaged are the ones that have often experienced, you know, their own like body image disturbance growing up, or have their own issues, and we so desperately we want to break that kind of generational cycle, and we don't want to pass it on. And I think that I think it's just important to kind of give ourselves a break in those moments and recognize like it is that the pressure is hard, and there isn't necessarily, I think for some people who are just coming to this conversation and are just starting to learn about, you know, things like weight, inclusive approaches to health, and using neutral language around bodies, and celebrating body diversity, this can all feel like incredibly challenging if you have invested a huge amount of labor and money and resource in your life to having a certain type of body. It almost feels like, whoa, I'm not ready to kind of go there yet. And also, you might want to protect your own child from experiencing discrimination or bullying that you experienced growing up. So it's a really natural response to kind of, you know, struggle with some of this stuff and want to protect your child. And I think it's okay to just have a moment and not like want to immediately jump in and fix everything, because like that is such a natural response. And you know, my work is very much focused on culture and how we can build classroom cultures of body respect, and how we can challenge some of these ideas and disrupt some of these ideas in, and we're really focused on that prevention space. But I'm sure Mel can talk about how we do that kind of more deeper intervention, because I think that the two need to go hand in hand. We need to have investment in prevention and challenge some of these ideas where they come up, and look at how we can create like school policies that support body image, and you know, classroom cultures that support body image, and how we can educate parents to think about using neutral language and things. But also we really need to invest in that intervention space as well, because I would say that, you know, for some of the kids that are in some of our workshops in schools, actually, by the time they have a workshop with us, it might already be too late. They might already really need like one-to-one intervention, like deeper support. And I think that that's a different conversation. So I'll team Mel up for getting
Mel, would you
involved.
like to dive in now that you've been called to the to the fore?
Yeah, sure. And this has been amazing to listen to. And I think your books are really important, Molly. I don't work with young people. I see 18s and above, but all of this is so relevant for me because well, I was a child that struggled with body image myself. So I've been there myself. I was also the one that was weighed and then told that I just needed to move a bit more and eat a bit less and all these reductive things. So I've had the struggle myself, which has led me into the work that I do, but also the people that I work with are the young people that grow up to continue these struggles. And most people I see will say it started really early, even if maybe the disordered eating maybe came a bit later. I mean, or there's something that made them notice that that was worse. Most of them will go, I think I've always felt like this. It's as far back as I can remember. And in my own experience, I just always thought you had to be thin. I mean, I can't remember a time I didn't think that because every woman around me was striving to be thin. So it was just the norm. So a lot of my job as a therapist is actually kind of dismantling, being curious about, and then sort of dismantling sounds too harsh, I think. I'm not going in, going, right, it's about, I suppose, being curious and understanding where this has come from, how this is built. It's going to be a complex mix of things, especially with eating disorders, really complex mix of things in a person's life. It's not just like someone went on a diet. It's not just social media. It's not any one of these things. It's probably going to be a complex mix. So I always say to people that this is why sometimes when I see people to talk about eating disorders, we're not really talking about food that much. We're actually talking about everything else in their life and their past and their relationships and their family, because it's rooted in everything. It's rooted in the context and in the culture, the way that they learn to eat, the way that they learn to be in the world, the representation that they've seen or not seen. There's so much in it. And I think there's also a lot of other problems underneath the body image, normally very connected to self-worth, and this can be connected to other forms of trauma, or not necessarily like capital T trauma, like really bad things happened, but like relational trauma. So like relationships with parents or other people in their lives can have a really, even if it's not, some of these things don't always seem obvious because they're not always obviously connected to food, but but it's usually all of this tied into it as well. And I suppose I can probably just speak for myself on this, is that mine was to do with very low self-esteem, very low self-worth, due to various things that I'd experienced in my life. So there was, in therapy for me, many years of therapy of kind of understanding and unpacking that and understanding how that had gone into sort of been sort of projected then into your body image, because your body image or your weight is something that you can fix. Not really, but it's when you feel out of control in the rest of your life, then your weight is going to be something where you think, well, if I just lose weight, then I'll be a little bit happier, feel a bit better about myself. And then obviously capitalism and the culture's just going, yes, it's going to make you happy. So of course people are going to do that. And it's hard to live in a world of weight stigma where every time you go to the doctors, you're just like, oh, they're going to tell me to go on a diet again. Even if you're going for something completely unrelated to your weight, it's the anticipatory anxiety of it. And it's all, moving through the world and not fitting in spaces as well for people in much larger bodies. The world isn't created for you. And that makes it really hard to not to choose to not diet. It feels radical, especially for myself, being in a larger body, being fat. In terms of language, I use different words. I would use, depending on the day and how I'm feeling and how radical I'm feeling on that day, I may refer to myself as fat, but it's still a difficult word that was used as a weapon against me when I was young. So I always go with what clients are most comfortable with, really, on that. I feel like I'm going off on a ramble, taking us off in a different direction. So I'll pass
No,
back.
but I just feel like I'm referring back again, but I just feel like, when did the progress that I thought, years ago was starting, where did it almost fall apart again? And I think I was listening to something, and it was even over COVID, we were getting better with inclusivity, with modeling, with what was showing up. It was much more happening. And since then, the latest is that the modeling's going all the way back down. We're going back to zero again. And I just think there's so much that we have to contend with in our lives, like so much problems in the world and enough struggle and whatever else. Why do we have to then beat ourselves up additionally? There's enough people out there who are ready to beat you up anyway. So why are we beating ourselves up all the time, right? It just seems like it doesn't serve us to have this negative, whether we're thin or fat or whatever. It just seems so hopeless, really, the whole situation.
You just mentioned over COVID, and I think something else happened over COVID. So yeah, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, body positivity was quite like a trendy thing online. There were lots of influencers, and now, like, we're in the age of Ozempic, and a lot of people, it feels like I log in and everyone on my feed kind of, there's definitely like lots of people look the same. And I'm not, that isn't, by the way, like a dig at any one individual person who chooses to take weight loss drugs. But the other thing that happened during COVID was that, the government wanted to put everyone on a diet. So wanting to put like calories on menus, that came in. And there was a huge amount of conversation around the impact of being higher weight and how that could make COVID more worse. So the way everyone should protect themselves against COVID is to go on a diet. And that was a lot of the public health messaging that was happening at the time. And then in my work, obviously, when the schools closed and lots of kids were being like home learning, the National Child Measurement Programme was paused. And then it was, there was a real aggressive push on, we know all these kids have put on weight in home learning, and they've been at home, and all these kids have got fat, and that's a real issue, and we need to like get them all back into school and weigh them all. And children are not immune to these messages. They hear this kind of culture around us, and it really like adds to all of those other things that they might be hearing from their parents, from their teachers in school, on social media, as well as the appearance pressures of having the right eyebrows, having the right hairstyle, whatever it is. And I think that that's where the critical thinking piece is really important. I think it's okay to take like a news article with your kids and say, actually, why do you think they're using this language? What are the implicit messages in this article? Particularly this age children, they really understand. I remember having a conversation with my kids. I had like some vitamin tablets, and having a conversation with my kids about, this is interesting. Why do you think they've chosen this person to be on the front of this vitamin packet? What do you notice about her? She's got really glossy hair. She's got really white teeth. What are the messages that we're getting? Oh yeah, if you take that vitamin, you'll look like this person, and that person looks healthy. And these are, and I think children they are often really receptive to having those kind of conversations. Pick your timings, not all the time, but if you get them in the right moment, they can be. And I think that, we have really moved into an era now where there is a real aggressive conversation around, health and weight, and, what is the impact on body image, and also what is the overall impact on health from people feeling like this. And I think that that's something that we can't shy away. We can't separate those two things.
Yeah. It's interesting when you were mentioning like the calories on the packet, or you get the A, B, C, Ds and all this kind of thing. I do feel like, yes, we need to strive for best possible health, right? So it means movement, it means exercise, it means good nutrition. But I feel like we're almost monitoring far too much now in a way, because we're almost taking the pleasure out of that purchase in the supermarket, or we're measuring how many steps we've come. I also thought about that the other day, like these watches, a lot of these ones for the kids, it's like they've got it all on there, and then they're beginning to be, pressured in a way, because like, how many steps have I done today? To a point, absolutely, it has its place and its purpose. But I do wonder if there's a sort of loss of spontaneity and joy in life from everything else that's happening. And again, I guess it's a bit with the weight loss drugs as well. It's like, is this a quick fit? And I want to talk to you, Mel, about that anyway. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because obviously you've written quite a lot about that recently, and you've talked about the need to sort of address also the risks and the societal impacts that come from taking weight loss drugs. Yeah, can you share a little bit more about that and why you think this conversation is important, in particular with people with disordered eating or larger bodies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much coming at this from a risk and harm perspective of working with people with eating disorders and disordered eating. So that is the thing that I do, and the thing I do every day. So for me, when I started learning about weight loss injections, there was a lot of conversations where people trying to be very, very balanced and very respectful, which is really important. I think there's a sense that people didn't want to make anyone feel judged who were taking, because there's enough of that in comment sections. If you see there's, lots of people just saying this is cheating, just eat less and move more, and all those kind of narratives, which is completely not the case at all, completely unhelpful, really harmful. So I think there's this sort of balance between trying to respect people can make their own choices, but also needing to highlight that, needing to counter something of this wonder drug mentality, because when everything is so positive about it, and then you get sort of these nuanced conversations that aren't quite challenging it enough, it actually just falls into that camp. And I thought, I've really got to go. If it's any way that I can do it, through a sort of eating disorder, like this is the lens I'm coming from. But that is difficult for me as a therapist as well, because I have to think individuals. I don't want individuals to think that I'm going to judge them working with them. So if I'm talking publicly about how terrible weight loss injections are, that's how it's perceived, then it's a difficult thing for me to manage. But I think that's also it's always been a bit like that, when I've been like, I've got this kind of side that is the activist advocate side, and the therapist side that is working individually with people, and that can be quite different. So I tend to kind of think I'm anti-diet culture. I don't like the culture of it. I don't like weight loss injections as a thing. I wish they just weren't a thing. I wish they weren't as big as they were. They were fine as they were before. They were for diabetes. They were fine as they were. But what's happening now is something a lot bigger. And my concern is mainly for people buying them online, working their own way out about this, because I know that people taking them who are prescribed to the NHS hopefully will be getting the support they need. So not as much my concern. My concern is the people who are taking them, who I guess you could phrase it as don't need to take them, but meaning that they're not over the certain BMI. For the NHS, you'd be over a certain BMI, and you'd have a probably at least one health condition with it as well. So there's not that many people. There's a lot of other people who want to take them. And I think that this is a huge majority, and there's a massive amount of risk with it, of even purchasing them online, where you're getting them from, how you're working out your dose. I've spent some time in Facebook groups just sort of see what people are talking about and what the kind of discourse is around this. And it's very much people using Facebook and as like Dr. Facebook, basically, like, I bought these on is this side effect normal, is this dosage normal, should I go? And it's really scary, because everyone's just answering that for each other. They don't know each other. They could be young, vulnerable, they could have an eating disorder. I wrote something not long ago for Dump the Scales, which is an eating disorder advocacy place, and they're also very much going with this thing of, this is really dangerous in this world for people with eating disorders or disordered eating, people who don't recognize they have disordered eating, people in recovery who are now trying to withstand this massive push of weight loss, but have actually worked very, very hard to like overcome, or as much as they can, be in recovery for their eating disorder. And then there's also the thing of it could actually spark eating disorders or disordered eating as well, because it's an appetite suppressant. So it's putting you into a place of arguably what could be disordered eating, and then also about coming off them as well. So there's so much in it, there's so many risks at sort of all elements of it. And some of the work I've done recently is actually focused more on stopping them and coming off them. But I think maybe I'm a bit ahead of myself. Because there might be at some point something where people are going, I have to come off them because of finances, can't afford to, they're expensive. If you're paying them for, they might go up in price, you might need to come off them.
What is the typical price, Mel? People are getting them at?
When I've seen them on all the advertisements that I see all over my feeds, they're a bargain at about 200 quid a week, I think, or something like that. 150, 200 quid is normally what I see. And I think that would that be per month? No, that would be per month. I mean, when I thought about it, I was like, I guess in some ways it might be equivalent to actually seeing a therapist instead. But I don't think people think about it in these ways. There's a lot of I mean, for me, I just thought you don't really go and see a therapist for body image issues. That's silly. It's silly to me now because that's what I mainly do. But also that people don't recognize disordered eating in themselves, and if they go to a doctor, doctors and health professionals don't always have very much the training. It's an hour or two on eating disorders, and it's probably very, very basic. So it's not bringing in the complexity of disordered eating, because not many people really neatly tick the boxes. So I think there's a huge amount of undiagnosed and unrecognized eating disorders which would fall within disordered eating. So it's kind of the difference in how I'm terming that. And then within that, how do you then know, with all the people taking weight loss injections, of if they are within that group of people with unrecognized disordered eating? Because there's no doubt that taking an appetite suppressant will make that worse. It has happened, with other diet drugs in the past. These can easily be abused by people, and steroids can be abused, laxatives can be abused. To me, it's just another thing sitting in that camp, except for this is a lot stronger because it's got a much bigger, wider positive context of like overwhelmingly like this is good for your health. And I was listening to, sorry, I will stop in a second, but I recently listened to a podcast called GLP-1 Truth Serum. It's by Virgie Tovar. And she was talking about how when they marketed these, they actually really went for body positivity. They went for the body positivity people and movement, because in a way, it's easy to get everybody else on board who's already wanting to try the new. You don't have to try, really, do you? Everyone wants that. But actually, to be able to really infiltrate and then start the body positivity movement and then start to dismantle it completely, is going to, have a much wider view of it. But so then the narrative very quickly became, well, body positivity is over now. We've got these drugs. Why would you not take them?
I think then there's that fear as well, how it affects young people. What we heard on the last podcast that we did, one of the guests, she was saying that, she's seeing kids coming who are just getting it from their mum's drawers and taking it, and potentially what effect might that have on their growth, on their hormones, on the reward system, because of course food is also it's all doing the brain chemistry, right? So what does that mean? Are they then later down the line going to have issues with depression because of the effects of it? And I think that's quite frightening, and we don't have the long-term results to know really what we're talking about, and that sort of idea of a society where it's a quick fix as well, and whether then that, I don't know whether it is a quick
exactly fix. And that's for me, it's not sustainable with all of these fads and these quick fixes. And it goes back to that education and information about your body and how your body is, and the shape you are and the makeup of your body, and everyone is so individual. And a lot of our conversations go back to the people behind everything, the individuality. We are so different, and so one person might be able to eat unhealthy food, be able to eat the crisps and chocolate and everything they want, and it won't affect their body size. Yes, okay, obviously the nutrition and health internally, and then another child, talking, you made me think of it with COVID, who probably was a person was snacking too much over COVID, when it was there and the temptations, and their body responds differently. And it's this education of what your body kind of needs, and that balance, it all comes to balance. And then these drugs that come in, or he's also thinking about the gastric bands, they're not permanent solutions. There's something artificial, that you're doing to your body that isn't the natural biological way of growing or living or being healthy. And that's for me what's really mind-blowing, is that it's just to get this desired outcome, and there's no thought actually, but if that's how I want to be, or how I think will make me happy, what else do I need to work on towards that? And it's this this mentality. And I've got one of my young sons, he's got a very certain physique, he really has, and he's not going to be one of these, no matter how much sports he does, or how much he like doesn't eat too much chocolate or whatever, but he's just going to have that body shape. He just will. And he's 6, he's very young, and a lot of what you said, Molly, it's like, how are we as a family, as his home, his safe place, us trying to speak in a way that we can just explore it, and we can all learn together how, what he might face at school or here at school, but how we as a family sort of respond to that. And we make those decisions around bad language, like swearing. There's every family's got their own approach to it. We make that around your beliefs, be it religious or how you should behave, but actually around how we look and how other people might respond to it. We don't often take that moment or have that confidence to explore it further. And that's the preventative element, and then as you've touched on, Mel, with this, when people are trying to fix something, when they do feel like there is an issue and a challenge, and then there's all these products, essentially another money-making commercial idea that they've got to contend with.
Mel, what are the biggest challenges that you face in the advocacy work that you're doing? And I'm just curious, because it feels like we've had this conversation saying it sometimes feels like we're not making any progress and we're taking another step back. How do you stay motivated to keep doing what you're doing?
I think I'm getting a bit more resilient with it over time, to be honest, because there's always someone. I don't know, I've got enough of a social media following to get proper backlash from it, but there's always people questioning me and challenging me in the field as well, which is fair enough. And it's because the overwhelming message is that weight loss injections are good for health, and then good for well-being, good for everything, and are life-saving drugs. The main thing that I get is that these drugs have saved people's lives, which actually is quite, I don't know how they know that. But I do know that working with many people who are a lot of people are very scared, not just people I work with, but people online. They're scared of being, the whole thing comes down to being scared of being fat, but like really scared that they will literally die from being fat. And so when you've got that kind of desperation, it drives doing anything, and it becomes not about health. Weight loss injections, to me, they're not about health, apart from when they're prescribed and in the form of diabetes and things. What we're seeing with the people taking them who are in smaller bodies, for instance, wanting to just drop a bit of weight, it's not actually for health, it's just for weight loss, and they're going to make an absolute killing off this. The main thing that has helped me all along this is probably learning about diet culture and how it makes other people money. That was where I started learning out. And I'm stubborn, and I don't like the idea of, like, especially for some man sitting in a big chair making money off me not liking my body. They don't care about my health at all. They don't care one bit. Pharmaceutical companies do not care about our health. And actually, it's going in. Weight loss injections really probably going to, and some people push it in the opposite direction, where they'll be malnutritioned because people don't eat. They forget to eat. They're not getting hungry, so they're just going to be like I think I actually saw in an advert once, so I could just not eat again. Like, this is an amazing gift to be given. Like, that's not health. It's not about health if we're ending up with people not eating at all. People still need to be, it takes it away from us, especially with young people, to be able to teach about having respect for your body and nourishing your body, because you can't make good choices, I guess, good choice, you can't make good choices for your body if you don't like it or respect it in the first place. I had to readdress my entire relationship with exercise and food and everything, and I couldn't have done that if I still had self-worth on the floor. I really had to, like, if you want to do movement, if you can do movement to help your body, you're unlikely to do that if you hate your body, because we're taught that exercise is punishment. We're taught that you need to take these things, like you have to. How much choice do people really have with weight loss injections in a world though where they're being told? When people come to me like, my family is telling me I'm going to die, my doctor's telling me I'm going to die from being fat, they don't have a choice. So the thing about, I've been reflecting on a lot recently about the informed choice with weight loss injections, because we're all about autonomy and choice. But can you really have autonomy and choice in a world that tells you you're going to die from being fat? Or like they're trying to navigate through a world where you don't fit in the world, or where you have to look this way. That's not an informed choice to me at all.
It's tragic. I was watching, I think it's The Biggest Loser, that was the US program that was on for, I don't know, decade, like if it was 10 years or something, they had it on. And there was one scene and they were making the participants run across a beach. And one woman ended up having a heart attack. And it was just that ignorance of like thinking that you can take people who have never run in their lives before and then put them into a situation with no kind of care or support or whatever else. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. And I think it's yeah, something that we all need to have more awareness for each other. And I think as well, when it comes to weight, you've got to want it, haven't you, as well? Would you say that's also a point that, I'm trying to sort of think about it. But if you're being told to do something, is that then going to be sustainable?
I mean, I don't think any of it is sustainable, to be honest, because generally weight loss isn't, and it's about diets or about this. And weight loss injections, people gain the weight back when they stop. Diets generally have a massive failure rate. It doesn't work. I mean, for some people, maybe who've made the lifestyle changes, improve their health behaviors, whatever, you can improve your health without it being focused on weight. What I found is quite helpful with people is to really separate health and weight, which again is something that feels unusual for people because we've grown up thinking that those two things are intertwined. But we can't assume that losing weight brings better health. A person may have an eating disorder. We can't assume that thin people are healthier. There's lots of people in larger bodies who are healthier. Some people don't have accessibility of health because they're elderly, disabled, have chronic illnesses. Health isn't accessible. You just do what you can for you. But to be able to make the choices to do what you can, I think it's more framing it as self-care has been more helpful for me personally. But again, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't actually care about myself or respect my body. So I had to do that kind of underlying work first. And then it's about recognizing what is actually helpful for me, shutting the outside noise out and the people trying to sell stuff to you and the people who don't understand your body. We can't assume that everybody can be thin. And weight is also like largely genetic. People just cannot. I've never been thin. I'm never going to be thin in my life. So I've had to make acceptance of that, and I'll work on my health, how I best see fit around that if I want to, and when I can, and when I have the capacity to. So I think it's a massive reframe to how a lot of us were brought up in terms of like exercise as punishment or competitive, and food is like you can't, there's bad and good foods and all that, and all of this. But there's really, I guess what we want to be doing from the conversations here for kids is to encourage them to have their own genuine autonomy and choice, and listen to their bodies and listen to their hunger signals, and have their option of choice of what they can eat, and not moralize food and not moralize bodies, and use like neutral descriptive words, but also to help them have that critical view of it as well. because they're going to need that. You need to be able to see through all the positives of weight loss injections, which I'm sure there are for some people, but they're going to need a real critical eye of that as well, especially when it's all over their social media feeds and people like Serena Williams, and to really think, like, to be able to have those conversations like Molly has, of just like, what do we really think of this? Because if we're saying that weight loss injections are kind of a bit like bariatric surgery, weight loss surgery, it should be sort of a last resort. It's kind of for people who've tried a lot of other things and maybe medically are being prescribed those. Why would we need to take them for everybody else? It really needs critique, not just for kids, but I think actually for adults. The real critique in this is, I think, how you'd be able to come to some kind of informed consent and a decision for yourself. We're not getting that at the moment because there's so much overwhelmingly positive stuff.
It feels a bit like trying to erase diversity as well. If we all take it, we can all be exactly the same dress size or whatever. Well, I would be curious, Molly, is how you think schools can better support this. I mean, just now when we were talking about exercise, I was sort of thinking, well, it'd be great if schools would offer a greater choice of different forms of movement, for instance, different types of exercise classes. Not everyone's straight out on the field and you've got to play hockey or you've got to do netball or whatever else. Are we talking about more choice when it comes to uniform, cooking, nutrition? Should we be doing more? What kind of things, are you suggesting or seeing working well?
Lots of thoughts are coming up for me as I'm listening to the conversation. And I think that one of the things that we really need to be careful with is that we are living in an age where there's a real cultural pathologization of hunger. And actually, children are learning really early on, like, not to trust their body. So children are born intuitively, generally knowing when they're hungry and knowing when they're full. And we trust them as babies often to, like, for example, with breastfeeding on demand, we trust them. And it's then children start getting older and we start not trusting their bodies and intervening. And that is also natural because we want the best for them. And there's a huge amount of emotional linking up with, like, how we're good parents. We have to give them enough love. We have to make sure they have enough to eat, etc., etc. So I think one of the things that we can do in schools is take a step back and think, are we contributing to this kind of cultural pathologization of hunger, where we're basically saying that, that we shouldn't trust our bodies and that body diversity is a bad thing. And I think that one of the things we can do that is take a really holistic view of health. So the word health has come up a lot in this conversation. And often when we think of health and healthy habits and healthy behaviors, the two things that we think about are what we eat, nutrition, and how we move our body. But actually our health is made up of lots of different things. And nutrition and movement are just two health behaviors, and health behaviors are just one piece of that pie. And the things that have a much bigger impact on our health are the social determinants of health, our genetics, and those are things that we can't control, particularly if we're children. And there's not very much point in telling a kid, you need to eat enough fruit and veg, you need to eat organic vegetables, if that kid is getting their food from a food bank. And also that kid might not be getting their food from a food bank, but they're probably not the ones doing the weekly shop at Tesco. They're not ones doing the meal planning. So actually, one of the things that we can do is thinking about the food education. So are we supporting kids to be in tune with their bodies and, be in tune with their hunger signals and fullness signals? Or are we giving them clean plate stickers at lunchtime? Are we telling them to eat all their veg? Are we making sure it's a feeding environment that supports neurodiversity and kids who might have sensory issues around, eating? Are we teaching them? Are we following evidence-based guidance around food education? So teaching them about the cultural significance of food. Food is more than fuel. Food is more than just a vehicle to get nutrients into our body. It's also about celebrating our culture, celebrating our heritage, celebrating our, family, and actually giving children opportunities to do this and think about food in a more expansive way is actually really good for their relationship with food, and also teaching them about where food comes from, giving them opportunities to get hands-on with food, grow food. And ironically, the evidence shows that when we take that approach to food education, rather than saying, right, here's a picture, put all the naughty food into one category and all the good food into one category, or whatever the thing is, actually, when we take those other approaches, we are much more likely to raise children who are going to be open to trying lots of different types of food, and have a more kind of peaceful relationship with food, and not be scared of certain food, or even like have a certain, like, not be able to kind of regulate themselves around sweets, for example, because they never have access to sweets, so that they, it gives this like sugar or whatever like even more power, and it's seen as this, oh, I need to like have more of that. So actually, I think in schools, so holistic view of health. So when we're thinking about health, it's not just about what we eat and how we move our body, but it's also about our like mental well-being. It's also having a recognition that different children in different families and different backgrounds are going to have different accessibility to some of those things that they're learning are healthy, and how can we maybe remove some of those barriers. Also recognizing that, bullying, discrimination, all of these things, poverty, that massively impacts our health and has a huge impact on our overall health behaviors, our health outcomes, sorry. And then thinking about uniform, have we got, is our PE kit inclusive? Do we have, is the brand of PE kit, particularly in secondary schools, if it's branded and it's got like the school logo on, does it come in a wide range of sizes? Because that's a huge barrier. If some kids can't get uniform that actually fits them, it's no wonder they're not going to want to do PE. Okay, let's talk about PE. Let's talk about the changing room culture. Is what's happening in the changing room, is body shaming happening? What are we doing to create a culture that actually challenges that? And because so much of these like body shaming incidents are just normalized as the kids who I often work with say it was banter, and it's normalized as banter. And actually, when we denormalize that and we challenge it and we say, actually, that's not okay. All bodies are good bodies, and we don't comment on other people's bodies, and it's never okay to comment on someone else's body, and that's not funny, and it's not okay. And how do you think that makes someone feel? And just consistently have that boundary, then actually that can also improve a kid's health outcomes and health behaviors. So I think it's about really thinking, what is health? What are the, because actually eating a wide range of food and having a peaceful relationship with food, and having a peaceful, joyful relationship with movement, moving our body in a way that feels good, and recognizing actually that, mental health and how can we support our emotional well-being and emotional literacy, all of those things, they're good for all of us, regardless of what body size we have. So we can just take a neutral, inclusive, holistic view to some of these things, and then, kind of reevaluate our school policies and our classroom practices, and reevaluate it through a lens of body respect and positive body image. We might think that actually we might recognize that some of the things that we're doing in the name of health and health promotion and health education could actually have the opposite outcomes to the ones that we want.
Yeah, I think it's so important as well, like, when we're talking about health then, and it's obviously, when you think body image, it's about the physical health, but it is so much of it starts and remains and reminds in the mind. And even just talking about the clothes, you put on school trousers that have no barely elasticated waistbands, and you've got a different shape, and that's going to be in your mind. This is uncomfortable. It brings attention to the area that you might be conscious of or have had comments about, and also this culture of food that's such a refreshing way to think about it as well. And actually, I had my son sitting around the table, and we don't always eat together. But one was moaning about the onions in the food, and I was like, but we're eating together, and mummy's only had to cook one meal. And I was trying to just bring that focus, not what he didn't like and what he did like, but the fact that we were all together we spoke about the food and everything like that. So I think that culture of food is quite an inspiring, you know, approach as well. It's more than just what it can do to you, if it's good for you or bad to you, but why we're eating it. And here in Poland, they eat so much cake, so much ice cream. And I'm not even going to comment on the healthiness of it, but you're like, good, it's part of the culture. There's patisseries everywhere. You know, it's lovely.
So I'd like, on that point, to move on to our tween question today, which was, as tweens, we're all going through a lot of change in our bodies, and sometimes it feels like we're not the right shape. How do we accept those changes instead of stressing over them? I'd like to go to you first, Mel.
Sorry, got stuck there. I thought you'd go to Molly first on this one, being probably more within her remit than mine, not necessarily working with young people, though I will answer this on the basis of I've been a young person myself and what I would have maybe liked, and also the people that I work with have all been those young people as well. I think I think it's about it's about so many aspects of this, really, of not just about the actual food and how it's about people respecting and being able to advocate for themselves. It's about trusting your own body, because so many times people have lost trust in themselves, especially people diet a lot. They have to learn to ignore their own like hunger signals and body signals and things, and a lot of that becomes really normalized as well and goes on for many years. People I've worked with sometimes have had that for many years, and then it's very hard to kind of work on trying to bring that back and working on trusting on yourself. And so many things to do with diet and exercise are about punishment, or competitiveness, or trying to be a certain way or look a certain way. Whereas if we can try and separate those two things of weight and health, then maybe we can look at all the different aspects of health that aren't actually about weight and ways that you could feel good about yourself. But I really think in order to make those decisions to feel good about yourself, you've got to like yourself in the first place, which is sometimes where that deeper rooted self-worth and self-esteem stuff comes in as well. So I think it's very much dependent on the person and looking at the other things that have happened in their life as well, and if counselling or something like that might be beneficial for them, especially for young people. If you can start that off at an early age, it's probably going to be a bit easier to wait, until they're adults, when there's a lot more to unpack. Working with like a younger person means you'd be able to look at the underlying things, sort of get in there a bit sooner, as it were, prevention work. And for eating disorders, it's all about, they always say with eating disorders, it's all the preventative work that needs to be done. So all of this stuff about like, reaffirming relationships with food and bodies will help reduce the amount of people that hopefully would help reduce the amount of people that actually go on to have an eating disorder then.
Yeah,
I think
love
I'll probably leave it at that, because Molly's probably got more to say,
No,
more specific.
I love it, and I love the fact that, like, love yourself because you're pretty cool. You don't have to be someone else. Don't need to aspire to look like someone else. Be your wonderful, beautiful self. So it's lovely. Thank you. Molly, what about you?
I would say so. Body image is the way that we think and feel about our body, and then in turn how we treat our body. And our body image is not this static linear thing, and it's not a journey. You don't get a gold star at the end of it or an A grade once you achieve like positive body image. Our body image goes up and down. It doesn't remain the same, and there are periods of our life when our bodies might be going through lots of changes, and it's very normal to kind of feel a bit unfamiliar in your body when we're going through these changes, and that can sometimes impact body image. Not all the time, but it can. But like I said earlier, there's a difference between something being common and then like just accepting it as normal. So the first thing is to remember, if you are feeling a certain kind of way about your body as your body changes, first of all, that is common. Lots of people experience this. And second of all, because body image is not this static thing, it doesn't mean that you're always going to feel like this. So there are things that you can do to kind of feel better. The second thing is, I'm really interested in the question, the use of the word right. So it can feel like our bodies aren't right, or we're not looking the right way. I'd like to interrogate that. What is the right body? What is the right way to have a body? And I think let's explore that word. Let's explore what you mean by that and where some of those ideas might have come from. And let's just get curious about that word, because actually when we know that all bodies are good bodies and that your body is a good body, whatever it looks like and whatever it's doing and however it functions, your body is worthy of your respect. And also, you're more than your body, you're more than your appearance. You know, the thing that makes you special and you is not the way that you look. So I'm just going to do a really quick activity and suggest a quick activity that we do at the beginning of our workshop. So I would like this person to close their eyes and think of someone really important to them, and then think of 3 things that they really love about that person. And the only rule is it has to be someone they know in real life, so it can't be a celebrity, and it has to be a human with a body, so it can't be a pet. And they have to think about 3 things about that person they really value and respect and love. So, you know, what are the things that they like? Why are the reasons they like hanging out with that person? How do they make them feel when they're with them? And maybe even write those 3 things down, and then look at your list and look at how many of those things are to do with the way that person looks. And it, you know, I have never run a workshop where everyone has put their hand up and said all 3 things are to do with the way that person looks. And I bet if that person was thinking of you, the 3 things wouldn't all be about the way you look either. And I think, you know, we live in a culture that often makes us think that actually the way we look is the most important thing about us. But remembering that the things that you value about the people in your life are often not about the way they look. And if they were thinking about you, it wouldn't be about the way that you look. That can help to disrupt, you know, these messages and just challenge them, and notice them. As soon as if you notice, oh, I'm feeling a certain way, I think I should look a certain way, or my hair's not quite right today, or my body's not quite right, notice it and challenge it. Because when we notice it, that can be quite an empowering thing as well. Just be curious and just notice it and just disrupt it. Oh, I'm noticing I'm having this thought. I wonder why that is, you know?
And you know what? The days I have the worst hair day, when I look in the mirror and think, oh my God, that's the day I get the compliment. So it can work both ways, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, concluding on kind of the thought processes, because it's the ongoing, you know, hardest things to control. But it's like, I love that bit, Molly, where you're like, yeah, just notice it, challenge it, accept it, don't accept it, deal with it, but actually don't just. I'm going to contradict myself now. Don't just accept it, but don't repress it. Don't just accept that you're going to think like that. Like maybe be like, oh, I don't look great today, but okay, I don't. But I'm still going to go out like this, and I'm not going to do anything else to try and improve it. Do you know what I mean? Or my hair's a mess, but actually, I'm not going to try and change it. You know, that acceptance good. So I do like that.
Can I just add something there as well? That's all right. I think, yeah, when negative body image thoughts come up, because I know a lot of people tell me that this can really spiral. So I think it's about, and this takes practice, it's like being able to notice when you're having those thoughts, like the observer part of yourself going, oh, I notice that I'm having negative body image thoughts, but thoughts aren't facts. So you don't necessarily have to believe it. You don't have to jump on it. You don't have to change anything of it. And, you know, I guess it's sort of like a mindfulness technique, and it's not something that came easily for me personally, but over time I think you can start to recognize that's a really negative thought, that's a really critical voice I'm having. If I said that out loud, it would probably be nothing you would ever say to somebody else, because it would be so mean. And so what you can do for sometimes for people, it's helpful writing them down, challenging them, or thinking about if you could change that to a compassionate thought, or if somebody like one of your friends or somebody that you like would give a counter to that thought, what would that be? So I guess we don't have to listen. Our thoughts, our negative body image thoughts aren't necessarily true. We don't have to listen to them. We don't have to act on them. We can just say, just for now, I'm going to put that away, because that's not going to help me today in my day. I've got more important things. Because ultimately, a lot of this takes up so much headspace, people worrying about food and body image. And I always think we've got so much more important things to think about and to do, actually. We don't want to have this, we don't need to have this taking up the space.
And having gratitude for our wonderful bodies that every day do keep ticking along for the most part and doing what they do every day so that we can live the lives that we do. And I think we forget that a lot along the way.
And thinking about how can we reward our bodies for the amazing things they do? What makes my body feel good? and that will be different for everyone because we all like, but really like focusing on how our body feels rather than what it looks like is a really useful thing, I think.
Amazing. Thank
Maybe
you.
there's, sorry, I was also going to say maybe there's something about social media in this as well, of it's not always a bad thing, because when I first joined Instagram, I decided just to go for body positive stuff. So really like looking at the social media that we're looking at, critiquing it, is it really that helpful? What's it serving me? But also finding like good communities on there that you can follow. There's a lot of body acceptance stuff, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of really, like you said, a lot of really good stuff out there. So just make sure you go that way and leave the rest behind. Thank you so much to our incredible guests today, Molly and Mel, for sharing their insights on such an important and very personal topic. We've learned a lot today. As we've heard, body image isn't just about how we look, it's also about how we feel about ourselves. Let's keep talking, listening, and supporting one another, because the more we openly discuss these challenges, the stronger we become as a community. If you're struggling with body image or self-esteem, know you're not alone. Change starts with us, and every step, big or small, makes a difference. This isn't only for young people, adults too need support in challenging the narratives that we've carried for decades. As parents, reflecting on the narratives we've internalized is key, and starting these conversations early helps our kids before outside pressures take hold. We need to stop measuring health by appearance alone. Health is balance, nourishing our bodies, staying active in ways that feel good, and building sustainable, healthy habits that last a lifetime. Everyone's body is different, and that's wonderful. So let's respect our bodies. Thank you for listening. If today's conversation resonated, then please share it. Stay kind to yourself and to others. And until the next time, keep informing those perspectives.